Lloyd, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon. So, for those who don't know him, Lloyd Skinner is the CEO, Chief Executive Officer at Greyfly.ai, which is a company that is investing heavily in developing artificial intelligence products for the project management world. Their intelligent project prediction tool uses AI to provide executives with delivery intelligence to increase project success. Now, Lloyd has over 25 years experience in large-scale program management across multiple sectors. He isn't just an AI person, so he deeply understands the work we do, as well as, of course, the technological capabilities of the AI that his business is creating. And that is why I wanted to speak with him about AI and project management. So, Lloyd, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mike.
So let's get straight in. Just to set the scene, why should we care about AI in project management? What are the potential benefits or impacts of this technology on project management that you can foresee? Or in fact, that you're seeing now?
Yeah, we are starting to see it, and I'll come back to that. But I think the key point here is the potential to increase project success. And you know, as project managers, program managers, etc., if there's anything that can help us increase project success, that's got to be a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously that can run into millions of pounds as well if you can deliver projects first time, every time in a consistent fashion. So yeah. For me, that's the headline, if you like, and everything else can stem off the back of that. In terms of AI in project management, my view is that there's a couple of main thrusts around what that means. And one side is about automation and trying to accelerate through efficiencies. So, you know, maybe that's, I don't know, taking progress reporting and automating it from start to end. That'd be nice for some of us. The other big side is on the prediction side. So predicting the outcomes of projects, if you like, so that you've got more certainty over the outcome at the beginning of a project and throughout the project as well.
When we talk about prediction, we can kind of all invent in our minds what you're predicting. So can you tell us what kind of AI prediction products exist in the market? What can it do now? What might it do in the future? What can't it do? Where are the limits to prediction on this?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, Mike. And what I would say is it's a very buoyant market. There are a number of players who are starting to, you know, chase good quality solutions that provide credible results. And those providers actually are a mixed bag from, you know, dedicated proprietary type of new scheduling type tools to others where, you know, the more traditional scheduling tools are starting to become more innovative in terms of how do they integrate AI capability within their tools. I also think you've got at least one more type where with the advent of products such as Microsoft BI, there's a lot more capability at your hands. And if you remember, certainly I remember this, you know, when we first introduced Excel or spreadsheets, you know, this was a real foreign technology, you know, or Word, you know, moving from typewriter.
Lotus 1, 2, 3 when I was at
VP Planner Plus, if you remember that one as well. So, you know, in a way, Microsoft BI and there are other products are becoming, you know, available to individuals as part of their office suite, and people are being educated and trained as to how to use them and how to visualize data. So, you know, once you've got beyond that visualization, I think that you can then start thinking about specialist company that, you know, can start taking that, you know, for want of a better term, backwards reporting and look at it from a more forward point of view, from a prediction point of view. So, you know, those sort of companies, for me, fall into those sort of three type of areas. The first, there's a couple of companies in the UK. There's Nplan, Nodes and Links, who have those sort of new scheduling tools, and primarily work in the construction sector at this moment in time, and have large data sets around those type of projects, and very much at the individual project level. How can you accelerate the critical path through a project? Other tools might be, more around assurance. So there's a company called Shark Tower that is looking to validate whether your project is likely to succeed in the first place. And then obviously there's what we're doing with Greyfly and intelligent project prediction. And I guess the difference from our point of view is that we're creating more of a portfolio product, which is aimed at executives who want to answer the big questions like, will my project succeed to plan? Will I deliver to budget? Or perhaps this business case that is being proposed by this project manager, or dare I say it, this salesman, actually, you were awry in the plan in the first place, because typically that project takes twice as long or costs twice as much. So those are the type of products in the marketplace. In terms of what they can't do, what I would start by saying is, even if you went back a few months or a few years, the lack of credible use cases which would demonstrate benefits, they didn't exist. If I roll forward now, Greyfly and others are now getting credible use cases which are proving the benefits that actually you can predict the outcome of projects. And and perhaps that's easier on the more structured, repeatable projects in the short term. So I mentioned construction or more waterfall type projects. Even those, I think over time you'll start seeing this is cross-sector. At least one of those vendors is pushing into other sectors as well. And certainly, our approach is top down. So we're sector agnostic, if you like. So I think, in terms of what they can't do, will start getting smaller and smaller. I think in a way, it goes back to, well, how do these systems operate? And they basically operate because they relate to data. And what data have you got? So I mentioned large data sets. Well, if an organization, you don't have a large data set, it's back to, well, what data have you got that can be used to prediction? And even that over time is going to be improved, because, you'll get data sets that you can use from other experiences. You'll get data sets that can be created based on a few data points, So it's all becoming lots and cleverer, and increasingly, for me, becoming a support tool to augment the project professional in terms of what the likely outcome of a project's going to be.
Yeah. It begs so many questions. I think a couple, if I can follow up on them.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one, absolutely, completely agree. Everything I've learned about AI tells me that the ability of the software is fundamentally limited by the data that you've got to feed it, which is absolutely fine. And I get the point that data will become more and more available because of tools like Power BI that make it easy for organizations to gather and disseminate that data. But what about the problem of bad data? We've got so many years of projects overrunning, and then politically the requirement is that we then rebaseline, and consequently the project delivers to the schedule and the budget that it was set out to deliver 3 months ago when it was last rebaselined. And therefore you're working off data which seems to say the project was delivered on schedule and on budget, even though fundamentally nothing like the original budget. So how are we going to be solving those kind of problems? Because they seem to me to be political problems to a large degree.
Well, in terms of success, I think you can put them into sort of technical or hard and soft challenges, but focusing in on the data. First of all, I completely concur. I'm not mentioning any names, but I've certainly been in organizations when exactly that's happened. And these are high profile projects as well. Cool. So I understand the point that you're making there. I think in terms of addressing that, there are a number of ways that you can address that. And I think the first thing to do is work out what the quality of your data is in the first place. So, what exists, where does it exist, how is it created, and what's the quality of that data? So in other words, do a data health check and benchmark your data. And then within that, what might sit alongside that is a set of recommendations to enhance your data going forward. Because, what you don't want as an organization is to be left behind. Because I can tell you, if you're not your organization isn't embracing this technology, your competitor is, as it were. So I think the first thing is to understand in good old project sense, the as is and the as is world before, trying to work out where you're getting to. I think the other thing there is, and we've deliberately taken this approach, is that the algorithms and the system we've created takes a top-down approach. In other words, we don't want thousands of data points around the project. Otherwise, you're into that garbage in, garbage out type scenario. So the more detailed you're in around the project, the more likely, the risk that you're identifying there about trusted data is to become prevalent. So for me, there's those two tactics. The other thing is, obviously, these machines can learn quickly. So the quicker that you start to get clean or trusted data into a system, the quicker that you can improve. So, for example, certainly in my experiences, most companies report progress on a monthly basis on any significant project. Well, over 3 months, you've got new data and you can look at, what you predicted in month 1 compared to what actually happened in month 2. So the system is learning rapidly. So even if you haven't got masses of data, you can start building it up. The key for me in there is being front and center about, what's the quality of your prediction? So to demonstrate the confidence that you've got in the prediction. So hopefully that answers, or at least goes some way to answer your question, Mike.
And actually, a light went on there because you said something that I found surprising at first, that actually you're not interested in large amounts of data, you're interested in the important data. And in human intelligence, HI, we are successful at intuition and prediction when we are working in an area of our own expertise, because we're able to, what Malcolm Gladwell calls it, thin slicing, actually taking a thin slice of the data. But the expertise we have tells us which thin slice to take that is going to give us that kind of rapid understanding of the situation. And it seems to me that AI is perhaps more like human intelligence than we might naively expect, because you're actually setting it up to do that, to find the important subset of data.
Well, I think there's 2 points there, which is, depending on which question you're trying to answer, as I mentioned earlier, for me, the big questions is, at an executive level, is it going to deliver to budget? Is it going to deliver to that go live date? So that helps with, which data points you want. I think the other point there that you said, Mike, for me is one of the beauties of machine over man, which is that single human that has all of those years of experience, that can translate it. If you can put the string of those humans together, then actually you've got the power of that machine behind you as well. Yeah. And the other thing in there is, obviously, you can do it quicker. If you're checking the feasibility of the likely outcome of a project, that might take one or a whole team of consultants, many days, many weeks of man effort to propose what the outcome is. And dare I say, it's out of date as soon as you published it. But if you've got a machine that can do that dynamically with real-time data and give you updates, then whoa, that's got to be fantastic. Yeah. Even better if you can tell why it's predicting the outcome as well. So what's the underlying drivers that are leading to delay, as it were?
Yeah. So my other follow-up question, because that's really interesting, is you talked about the ability to predict schedule, and you've also mentioned that budget is in there as well. And I think that kind of hard data, anything that is susceptible to hard data is susceptible to predictions, so that resourcing. But of course, the one thing that's going to blow your project out of the water is risks.
Yeah.
And so where is AI prediction? Obviously, it can't predict a risk because that's the nature of risks. They're uncertain. But can AI predictive tools help us with our risk management and our risk evaluation?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is I think they can predict risk at a certain level. There's a couple of things here I'll mention. Where we started before diving in to build the product is we actually spent 6 months researching why projects failed. And we ended up, from our point of view, looking across all sorts of academic research. And we clustered the reasons for failure in what we call our 7 foundations for project success. Within those, there are quantitative and qualitative reasons for success. So quantitative, you've mentioned, there's schedule, there's budget, there's resource plans, there's financial benefits, all of that sort of stuff. The softer side, I think, is really interesting. So, what are the data points, for example, around business change or around governance? Maybe it's, have you got a business change manager? Is it the number of people on a project board? I don't know, but what I do know is that as our product matures around the quantitative, we have on our radar to look at those qualitative features. So it's going to be a bit of a voyage of discovery. In terms of risk prediction, just coming back to that, there are, in the same way as the sort of gold rush for scheduling tools, there is increasingly becoming a rush around risk prediction as well. And I'm sure you've been there. Certainly, as you get more experience, I personally have a vanilla risk log that I give to my project or gave to my project managers to start their risk process at the beginning of a project. And I sort of see this very similar to that. If you can hit the ground running around prediction and around risk tools, then it's got to be increasing the likelihood of success. Well, maybe it's, simple things like the quantity of risks compared to whether the project's successful or not. I've got some interesting stats around that. So in terms of, whether you even record a risk or not, and then obviously you can start looking at the types, the likely probability. So there's a lot of data points there that you can start building up. And, there are 1 or 2 products starting to exist, but I think there'll be more over the coming months and years in this space.
Well, I would hope so, because I think with risk, the one thing we are absolutely prone to, and it's no different, I suppose, to scheduling and budgeting. But with risks, it seems to me to be far more evident the proneness we have to bias.
I knew you were going to use it.
And of course, that's the one thing a machine won't do is obviously you can program bias in, but you can also program it to evaluate the data and give it the weighting that you select to give it. And as long as you ab initio select to give it a fair bias, a fair weighting to each element, that's great. So these are fantastic tools that you've outlined, and I think we've got a good idea now of some of the things that AI will do for us and can do for us now. And you're starting now to work with big organizations implementing some of these tools. So what are the challenges those organizations are facing on the ground, getting them up and running, and what is stopping them succeeding and what is helping them to succeed? What's your experience?
It's again, great question, Mike. Obviously we talked about data. I'll just expand on that a little bit more, just to stress the importance that data is produced normally by a process. So whether that's your scheduling process or your finance process or your approval process, what we're seeing is that direct relationship between process enhancement and, that old adage of project management maturity. The higher mature you are, the more likely you are to be successful with your projects, as it were. Yeah. So, that is a constraint. And what I can tell you is it can be used to drive maturity. If you haven't got a data point around budget, well, one might question that, but you wouldn't be the first organization that did have one. But you were going to push those questions and push those processes forward. So I think you've got that side and those harder technical sides, like, does this mean I've got to swap my existing systems out? Will this talk to my system? And some of those vendors I mentioned, it will mean that you need to move towards more proprietary technology. But, we are becoming, in an age where APIs are prevalent and you can start hooking data out of multiple
So before you talk about them, just for anyone who doesn't know what an API is.
Apologies, yeah. So in other words, I can hook directly into a system, grab the data out of that system in a dynamic way. It basically means I can get that data straight out of my system. The other extreme is to run batch processing. So I run a report and then I work out how to ingest it into a new system. So there are a series of technical constraints that people may see as barriers to entry. However, there are also softer side. And for me, the softer side probably go into things like resistance to change, things like sponsorship. It's sounding like a project. You need a good sponsor on this type of
Well, I mean, you don't need to be in the world of AI to know that the technical problems aren't the big problems, because if the vendor has the product, they have the staff to solve those technical problems. The challenges are all going to be around people and politics and emotions.
You got it, and it sort of goes back to your bias point as well. To some point,
absolutely.
So can you imagine? This project prediction tool is telling me my project's going to be twice the length, and you've got some, let's say, mature person who's the program director who basically says, the computer says no, to quote a phrase, as it were. Yeah. So you've got that tension, that resistance to change. I think, like any successful project, get a sponsor, get somebody who might be embracing innovation and taking a more data-driven approach. Of course, there's cost as well. Yeah. There's cost involved. And whether that's on a license deal to use the software or there's some sort of onboarding cost, there needs to be a business case. And I think that is ultimately, and we certainly do an annual survey in this space, where the number one barrier to the uptake is credible case studies. So demonstrate there's return on investment.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I did a webinar live stream about AI and project management, where I said, at the moment, if you're trying to build the business case, there isn't the hard data yet.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting closer. I know on your site you've got some interesting white papers that start to talk about that, which I think is great. It seems to me that you talked about some big savings to be made because of the repeatability. But if you're talking about a big civil engineering project or a mega project, then it doesn't take a big margin of saving from software like yours to manifest into a powerful business case.
Yeah, absolutely. Millions, if not billions, depending on the domain. I think the other angle in there is that you need to articulate that ROI in a certain way, because there's two angles for it from my learning. One is, it's almost opportunity cost saving, because as soon as you've, intervened using AI, your project is going to change the direction. So one of the things that we demonstrate is the difference between what is predicted versus what's forecast versus what actually happened. In other words,
what's your distinction? You made a distinction between forecast and prediction. I'm interested in how you're distinguishing.
So I basically say what's being reported versus what's being predicted. So if the project manager is reporting that they're forecasting this amount of spend or this time versus what the system is predicting. And if you then have the tally of against the actual, what actually happened, you can compare the two. But if you've intervened, I think this is where the second interesting ROI is for me. And it's about certainty and planning confidence. If you know with a higher confidence what the actual outcome of the project is going to be, then there are all sorts of decisions and actions that can hang off the back of it. If you know that at the start of the project, hey, maybe you wouldn't have approved the project in the first place. Again, for me, this is one of the key points here, that we need to convey this confidence. And it's not always £10 saved, as it were, because I can tell you what's going to happen with that £10. You're going to spend it on a different project. So it becomes more of that opportunity cost side, as it were.
But I think that you've made a very interesting point there about the value of confidence. I mean, we only have to sort of look at the way the world is now, the uncertainty there are in financial markets. If you have confidence to place an order more accurately in time, there are cash flow savings, there are potentially interest rate savings, potentially foreign exchange savings. People forget the nuts and bolts of good project management, particularly on big projects, are about things like procurement and contract management. They're about the possibly mundane things, but important things. But I think one thing you haven't addressed in talking about the challenges in the business plan, you're talking about the cost as potentially being a barrier. And, again, potentially as we're speaking, the world, a lot of the world economy is on the cusp of recession, which is, potentially stop people investing in things that are a good investment. But there is another big cost, it seems to me, because what you've already told us is that if this is to work, it relies on a good data source. So if I spend $1,000 on Gravefly.ai's predictive technology, I need to spend, I don't know, what am I spending comparable amounts, more, less, on creating data infrastructure that will support the engine?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is, shouldn't you be doing that anyway?
Really?
In terms of reporting the progress of your projects to your executives, shouldn't you be doing that anyway? So there's that question. I think, again, it depends on, how far you go on that. There's a whole push also for companies for putting in things like data lakes, where you pool all your data together. And certainly some of the conversations I have with companies that have done that, they're almost like, I can't see the wood from the trees type scenario. So I've got all this data, it might be muddy, and I don't really know what to do with it. So again, for me, it's a case by case basis. It's like, what do you have in place? How can we make the most of it? And if your processes to create data are poor, then it's probably not Gravefly.ai you're directly spending with. It's probably some sort of consultancy company. I'm mentioning no names, that are supporting you to improve your processes. So no matter what, I think there's a requirement there. But I think it goes back to the return on investment. As an organization, we have to show and prove to our prospective customers that there is a return on investment, or you get to those sponsors that, get this and can see that, okay, we need to go for a period, but this is innovation. We know that the opportunity there is enough for me to put in a few £1,000s to get going. So it's an interesting one. Again, for me, Mike, over the next, like I said, there's use cases already appearing, but over the next year, 2, 3 years, these use cases will be everywhere. And, it's almost like we're at the turn of a tide. When I started talking about this subject 4 years ago, people just looked at me strangely. Now, we're published by every single project professional body. Everybody is talking about this. It might, go up and down in terms of volume of what it's being talked about, but people are starting to see this. So, it's going for a wave of change, as it were.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's why for me and my channel, 2023 is the year of AI in project management. It's where I'm putting a little bit of an extra boost on the channel. And so it's really great to have you here. Can't let you go before I ask you, what do you see? What do you predict? What does your AI predict is the future of AI in project management? Have you asked it?
Well, obviously I haven't asked it directly. I do ask myself all the time because, we have a product roadmap as an organization and we have a product roadmap. We're looking at the marketplace. We have a survey. So we try and understand where this type of technology is going, as it were. I think the first thing I would say in this space, we sort of touched on it, is about data and data sets. I think the data sets will be improved and enhanced whether that's real data set or supplemented by synthetic data. So synthetic data might take essence of real data and be added to, because the system will look for patterns in that real data to expand both horizontally and vertically in that data. So I think generally data will become less of an issue going forward.
Doesn't that risk, though, you take a small amount of data, any flaws in that data are just going to get amplified up as you...
Yeah, but then, you know, over time, as you get actual data, you're building that, you're building out that bias. And, you know, like we said earlier, the more data you've got, the better. And you know, as long as you're monitoring what actually happens compared to your prediction, it should start taking that challenge away, as it were. And for me, that means that actually what's going to happen is the confidence, the quality of the predictions themselves are going to improve. You know, and I mentioned, you know, certainly we as an organization are front and center in terms of the confidence in the prediction. And I can do that because I'm monitoring what was predicted versus what actually happened completely all of the time. So I think we'll see that the quality of these products are increasing, the ROIs are increasing, and therefore, you know, that holy grail of getting as close as to possible of making a prediction at the start of a project to what actually happened, we're going to nudge ourselves closer and closer to that point. I think also talking about data, and I think there'll be an increasing experimentation around other data points. You touched on it earlier. For example, in the construction sector, maybe you grab weather data. I know one organization's already looking at that. And, you know, is there a direct relationship between the quality of the weather and the project success, as it were? So, you know, you can see an expansion around the data. I think, you know, back to that, what I also touched on earlier, the maturity, that I think the penny will drop about the relationship between taking a data-driven approach to project management maturity, and project success rate. So I think that will start increasing, and you'll see these type of tools integrated within all of the processes of an organization. So not just in terms of monitoring progress reporting, but, you know, should I go ahead with this project in the first place? Well, the project manager or the salesman is saying it's going to cost this. Let me double check from an assurance point of view what the system thinks it's going to take. We're pushing back on that project, you know. So I think you've got that push into projects not yet started, as it were.
So if the predictions get more and more accurate, if AI is freer of bias, and we know there's bias in some AI systems, but that's driven by the data we choose to give it. As we become more hands-off in our selection of the data, and AI is better able to select its data based on its experience, its predictions will get better and better. Do you foresee a time when organizations will say, you know what, C-suite riddled with biases, history of prediction pretty rubbish, AI bang on the nose, we'll let the AI make the decisions. You know, it will decide which projects to do. It will decide which contracts to seek or contracts to fulfill or which staff to allocate. Is AI going to have some form of agency in our lives at some point?
It's a fascinating question, and you know, I'm relatively well read in this space, as it were, and I personally like the phrase augments the human. So in other words, like computing or like the spade in the garden, it helps us do our job better, if you like. And you know, we're in a nascent technology land here. You know, like I said, 3 years ago, products didn't exist. So, you know, we're at the beginning of this gold rush or this revolution. So, you know, for me, what it's likely to do is change the nature of roles. And you know, if it can help to make project managers more efficient and more effective, and those people around projects, that's good. So I think what is obvious is that there will be some changes in job roles. But for me, it's like, you know, who knew what the impact of the spreadsheet was going to be? I certainly remember, spreadsheets, when we just used a pencil and paper on some squared bit of paper. And now even I wouldn't pick up a squared bit of paper to work out my multiplications. So I think it's the advent of new tech generally, and it will become increasingly embedded. So I think it will be more about, well, what jobs will change and what jobs will exist and what new jobs will be created as well. So I certainly am not a soothsayer in terms of negativity around this. I think, we as humans have been evolving for thousands of years, and I think that will increase.
I think that's right. I mean, there has to be some big changes. I mean, we know already that the accident rate of autonomous vehicles powered by AI is actually lower than the human rate.
Yeah.
The challenge, the reason they're not on the roads is because we haven't sorted out the legal framework.
That's right. That's right. And you think about autopilot. We're comfortable with autopilot in a plane, Yeah.
But we're not yet comfortable with the plane taking off without the pilot.
One of the things I'd see there, I mentioned the advent of Microsoft Power BI earlier, and certainly in these construction industry where there's a lot of companies who are reimagining themselves as digital companies and have recruited large swathes of data scientists and data analysts and experts in this area. So already that's a positive effect.
Yeah.
Longer term, again, for me, I think there will be a leveling out of that where, you start asking the question first, which is, should I insource or should I outsource? I mean, when you're building up these huge capabilities, it's only a matter of time, before you have to ask those more difficult questions. But, it will change. And your example around flying planes, I think is a perfect example in this space. Again, personally, I think that planes probably will be flown by robots, dare I say, at some stage, in maybe not in my lifetime, but certainly at some stage. And, you're seeing that with drones, for example, with Amazon, who are going to be delivering your latest Amazon parcels without man in van and all of that sort of stuff. So, for me, it's back to we're in early days of technology in so many parts of the world, and I'm showing my age now, but certainly I remember when the 1K ZX80 was around, which was 30 odd years ago. So who knows where we're going to be in another 30 years, to be honest.
It's an unfair question to ask you. But I think you've given us plenty to think about. Are there any thoughts you have that I haven't asked you about that you think you'd like to have said?
I think generally, you've covered, all of the great intro points, Mike. One of the things for me, I asked this question to VP projects of a large global logistics company. You can work out who that may be. And he said, you've got to be innovative. It's back to the point I made in the middle of the conversation, which is, you've got to get on your bike because otherwise you're going to be left behind here. So do start embracing it. Do start understanding what it means. Do start, seek out people like myself who are relative experts in this area. But don't be scared of it. It could actually have some benefit for you. So dare I say it, now is the time. Now is the time. Don't be left behind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Whether you're if you're an organization like your clients, the mistake I think people would make would be to consider this to be a technology issue. For me, it seems to be it's a strategy issue. It's existential.
Do you know, when I speak to people, I finish off by saying this is transformation. So the softer side here is as important as the technology side, and especially when we mentioned bias and we mentioned a couple of examples. You've got to think, like any good project, you've got to think, beyond the technology, you've got to think about the people and processes and business change and all of that, because that's what really makes a successful project. And implementing a new piece of technology needs to be done in a project fashion, in my humble opinion. So.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really great opportunity for project managers over the coming years to get involved at the ground floor with implementing AI related projects, not just bringing AI into our project management discipline, but AI will touch every element of an organization.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And there's going to be a lot of opportunities there. Yeah. So for people who either want to engage with you as a thinker or with your business as a potential customer, tell us how the best way people can get in touch with you and find out more about you and about Greyfly.
The more structured way is greyfly.ai is our website. Similarly, you'll find us on LinkedIn. If you want to get in touch with me directly, it's lloyd.skinner@greyfly.ai, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll find me. Yeah. I'm on Twitter. I haven't got, Twitter I'm just playing with at the moment, really. So either LinkedIn or the website is the best way, Mike.
And I would say, when I went looking at the Greyfly website, and there is a wealth of really good information available. So for those of my viewers who know that I've got an AI and project management learning product, one element of that is a set of recommended reading, and I've added a lot of the Greyfly content to that list, because there's a lot of great stuff there that you can use to inform yourself and also to inform your colleagues.
Thanks, Mike. We try to at least put a paper out every couple of months. So there's some good stuff there, and as I mentioned earlier, we do an annual survey, which is, showing the uptake increasing. So,
yeah. So there's a lot you can learn from Greyfly, even if you are just a project manager who wants to learn about this stuff. And I think you're absolutely right, Lloyd. Now is the time. There is no better time than now to start learning about this stuff, because it will be a distinction, not just between the organizations that have and the organizations that are dragging their feet, but also the project managers who understand this world and the opportunities it has, and those who choose to close their eyes and hope it all goes away. That has never worked for us as project managers.
Fantastic. I agree with you, Mike.
So, Lloyd, thank you very much for a fascinating introduction to AI and its ability to predict project outcomes. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me, Mike.
Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'll be creating loads more great project management content, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.